Hi everyone and welcome to the channel. The subject of today's video is inside this parcel, so without further ado, let's get it open. And there we have it. This is a boxed Asus EEE model 1602. The box looks like it's in good condition, so let's hope the contents are too. This was released here in the UK back in November 2008 for about £430, and at the same time the model 1603 was released, which was slightly more expensive. Now this 1602 and the 1603 have very similar specs, which I'll get into later in the video. But I will say that their specs are very similar to the Asus EEE PC that we looked at a few videos back, so I thought this would make a good follow-up and comparison between the two. So let's get the box open and see what we've got. Okay, first things first, we've got the power adapter. Of course, with the form factor of this, no battery to worry about, unlike in the EEE PC, so straight adapter. It's between 100 and 240 volts input at 1.5 amps, 50 or 60 Hz, outputting 19 volts at 3.42 amps. The original mouse. That's a dinky little mouse. Quite shiny, very grubby. Oh, that's going to need a good clean before I do too much with this. A thin little short cable on there. Still quite clicky on the scroll wheel. But yeah, that's going to need some cleaning. It's quite small. Not the most comfortable mouse I've ever used, but we'll give it a try. Next up, the keyboard. Again, credit to the seller, they've kept all this original packaging and packaged it back up quite nicely. Keyboard feels surprisingly weighty. Very glossy, full of fingerprints as you'd expect. Feels about as nice to type on as it looks. No numpad. It's quite a small keyboard, which is again what you'd expect for this type of machine, but I'm going to try and stop the light reflecting off it there. But yeah, that's not terrible. Again, it's going to need a good clean before we go too much further with it. Right, I'm glossing over this bit because there was a load of stuff included in the box that wasn't part of the original packaging. However, we do have the quick start guide, the warranty and the instruction manual, all original, and we do have the recovery DVD and the software DVD. Now, the inclusion of those I do find quite interesting because this computer does not have an optical drive on it. So if you ever found yourself in the position where you needed to use these DVDs, you're going to have to get yourself a USB DVD drive and boot it that way. There's no way of using them otherwise.
And here's the main thing, the Asus EEE 1602. Just to give you a quick rundown of the specs of this thing. As I said earlier, it's very similar to the EEE PC that we looked at a few videos back. It's almost an EEE PC inside a Nettop, as they called it, form factor, an all-in-one. The same 1.6 gig Intel Atom processor, same 1 gig of RAM, similar kind of port layout, card readers, etc. Because they weren't so tight for space inside this thing, it's a 160 gig spinning hard disk, so we've got a lot more room compared to the built-in SSD on the EEE PC. But I do wonder if having a hard disk as opposed to an SSD is going to hurt the feel of this thing when we're using it. You know, the responsiveness of it, since We've only got that 1.6 gig Intel Atom to keep everything chugging along. 15.6 inch touchscreen with 1366 with 768 resolution. It is a touchscreen, single touch only, so we can do basic gestures on there. Multi-touch was around at the time, but Asus did not implement it on this. Be interesting to see how that goes and if it still works. Like the rest of the accessories, it's pretty grubby. Quite a lot of muck. We're going to need to give this a clean, and this screen is very reflective. You can probably see the tripod and the camera reflecting back. External controls for brightness, volume, status lights. I think it's quite a swish little thing. It's a little bit heavier than I thought. It weighs about 4.3 kilograms, which is about 9.5 pounds. And when this thing first came out, it just set you back £430 here in the UK. It was the cheapest of the two. There's the built-in GMA 950 graphics adapter, just like the EPC did. If you'd plumped for the slightly more expensive 1603 model, you'd have got yourself a Mobility Radeon HD 3450 instead. So the only difference between them was the slightly better graphics. There were two more models released in the series later on, the 2002 and the 2003D. They were released in August 2009, so about a year later. The biggest difference with those is you were getting much faster PCs, you were getting optical drives, bigger screens. One of them ran the NVIDIA Ion chipset, I think. No ports on the sides, on that side anyway. Here's the back. Quite a sturdy metal stand. They've even left the original bit of PD plastic on the back. But what have we got? We've got Ethernet, 3 USB 2.0 ports. That's that one. DC in. We got 3.5mm jacks. Looks like we've got line in or mic in, line out, headphones out, another USB port, Kensington lock. And then on this side, you might be able to see down there, two more USB 2.0 ports and an MMC, SD, some multi-format card reader. Right, I'm going to give this thing a quick wipe down and then we'll get it plugged in, switched on, we'll see if it works. Call me picky if you like, but I'm generally not a fan of too much brown coming off when you're cleaning things. That was just the first wipe from wiping over the Nettop. I'm not sure if I feel better or worse having seen that. Right then, we're plugged in and switched on. Let's press the power button and see what happens. Straight away we've got that nice bright blue LED glow behind it, which is very typical for the time. And we've got this nice matching blue glow sort of projected into this sort of curved plastic bit underneath the screen. And we're booting into good old Windows XP. Oh no, the computer might be at risk. Our AVG Antivirus Free Edition 2012 might be out of date. Might? So as expected, that boot up took a while. It took about 5 minutes to get to the Windows XP desktop and then the thick end of another minute to load this sort of touchscreen overlay that you can see here. So I do think the spinning hard disk is affecting the speed and responsiveness of this machine. I think the fast SSD in the EPC really helps to mask the quite mediocre processor performance out the 1.6 gig Intel Atom, whereas the spinning hard disk in this machine really shows that up. I didn't ask for it to load this overlay that you can see here called Easy Mode. This loaded automatically when Windows XP started. So looking at this touch interface, you can see we're on the Communications tab at the minute. We've got Skype, email, eMemo and on the web. Well, we can't really look at on the web since we're not connected to it. And an eMemo, I'm guessing from the icon that that's just a Windows sticky note type program. So let's move on from that and have a look at the Fun tab.
On here we've got a couple of extra games installed. We've got Adventure Under the Sea and eBand. We've also got eCam app for accessing the webcam and eCinema for watching your films and whatnot. The rest of it I think is just shortcuts to standard Windows programs. The Work tab is exactly what you'd expect. It looks like the majority of these link to Microsoft Works programs. And finally, Tools is where you come to get your shortcuts that take you to various different places for adjusting a bunch of different settings, as well as shortcuts to both the Opera and Internet Explorer web browsers. I'm not going to bore you showing you all of these. I did have a look at each one of them and there's nothing particularly interesting. I also made sure that I ran the touchscreen calibration utility. Ran that was fine, and then I spent a bit of time using the touchscreen and just sort of getting to know it. I have to say the touchscreen is very underwhelming. Forget comparing it to modern touchscreens, even to other touchscreens of the time, this is not pleasant to use at all. It's the resistive type touchscreen. You have to press pretty hard on it to get your pressors to consistently register, and just the general sort of tracking on the screen of where you're pressing and what you're doing, it's not very good. I mean, you can try and drag and drop something, you pick something up and halfway along dragging it, it'll forget that you're dragging it or not register that you're dragging it, and you end up dropping the thing in the wrong place. It's quite frustrating to use. There is a stylus that you can get for this, though there wasn't one in the box. I don't have one for this. However, given that this is the resistive type touchscreen, I'm sceptical as to whether or not that would actually improve the usability of it. A quick look in control panel and in system shows no surprises. This is a stock machine, nothing's been upgraded, and indeed in device manager everything's installed properly and is present and correct. So after spending a bit more time using this PC and getting to know it, what do I think? Well, it's a bit rubbish really, I'm afraid. There's the two main problems with it that I've already mentioned in this video that just make the thing a pain to use. It's not endearing in the way that retro technology often is. The first is that touchscreen. It's just horrible to use. And there's not really a compelling reason to use it. You've got a perfectly serviceable keyboard and mouse, and you get very few built-in apps that take advantage of it. You've got a couple of naff games that are just not really worth playing at all. You've got that right on your screen memo type app, which again, completely frustrating to use because the screen doesn't track very well. And other than that, the majority of the built-in apps all link to programs that use a keyboard and mouse. So what's the point of the touchscreen then? But even putting the touchscreen aside and just treating this as a Nettop that doesn't have a touchscreen, the performance of it, again, just doesn't make it fun to use. It makes it frustrating. The spinning hard drive just shows up every single deficiency of these Intel Atoms and their comparative lack of performance. A slow hard disk and a slow processor paired together just doesn't make a nice experience. And it's a shame really. I quite like the form factor. I quite like the look of the thing. I mean, the keyboard and mouse are okay, they're perfectly serviceable. I think the keyboard more than the mouse, in fact. It's as I said, it's quite weighty, it feels pretty decent. The mouse, a bit small for my likings, you know, some people are like that, but they're just USB devices, you can change them to ones that suit you. That's fine, no problem. But overall, because of these frustrations, it doesn't endear itself to me. It doesn't give me the warm and fuzzies. It doesn't give me a reason to pull this thing out the box and want to use it. So what are we going to do with it? Well, I think the plan is to just leave it for now. It's still going to get a thorough clean and then it's going to be put away, and it's great to have a box example of this, don't get me wrong. However, when I clean inside, I am going to have a look, see how easy it is to upgrade the hard disk, upgrade the RAM. Maybe I'll have a search through the spare parts box at some point in the future, see if we can pull out a bit more RAM for this and SSD, effectively make it like the EPC in terms of spec. I think doing that would make a world of difference to this. However, for now, I'm just going to say I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please give us a thumbs up or a subscribe. There'll be more videos coming soon. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.